second half spoilers kind of way. Okay, we're live. Because I don't really care about spoilers for Ready Player One.
Neither does Ken, actually. We talked about it before we went live. Ken's cool with spoiling the movie.
Oh, okay. He didn't see it either. Yeah, I don't care about spoilers for Ready Player One.
So we got an introduction. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Movie Boozer Pubcast this week. Pre-WrestleMania.
Pre-WrestleMania, and who gives a shit except for
the Bills? For the two Bills.
Well, Hawk is probably going to watch, maybe.
Hawk has some interest in it, yes. Hawk is not here today. He is sick, unfortunately, but he should be back next week. That'll be great. We are joined by, of course, our host with the most, Ken Ekman, Bill Leon.
Yes.
And myself, Bill Arsenault. So I'll leave it to Ken to get back in the lead.
So since we already were leading into Ready Player One, that's why I decided to hit play in case anything came out of it. But Bill A., you saw Ready Player One.
Yeah.
And neither of us have seen it outside of you. So
it's up to me to sell you guys on this movie or not sell it?
Well, it's not that I need selling on it. It's that here's the thing.
You want a quality check.
Did you like it? That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like, don't worry about selling us. I just want to hear what you thought of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Give us the full skinny.
My brother was super excited to see this movie. He's a big 1980s fan and big fan of Emblem and Back to the Future. In fact, I just got him a Back to the Future phone case, and he was pretty happy with that. But he was really excited for this movie because one of the quotes from the trailer was, I wish I was born in the 1980s, like all my heroes, and he was like, yeah, man, except I was born in the 80s, but me and my brother were born in the 80s in 85. And so he's like, all right, I relate to this automatically. We went to go see it. He loved it. I was kind of lukewarm on it. I guess to get it out of the way, this movie is very obviously like the book, and I've read passages from the book. It's almost like 50 Shades of Grey bad.
Oh, really?
Like the Ernest Cline's writing is so non-finesse. It's literally just reference after. I'm saying this literally, like it's literally reference after reference after reference, and then computer lingo, then video game lingo. Hey, noob. Stuff that you wouldn't say in real life or IRL.
The whole concept is that it's supposed to be
it's a future where people have escaped into escapism,
right?
And no one seems to care about making the real world any better.
Mm-hmm. They've
just given up, so they just escape into this wonderfully crazy world where you can do almost anything, which is awesome. Don't get me wrong. The movie does a great job in expressing that through the special effects and the animation and the motion capture and everything. I mean, we see at one point there's this game sequence where it's a car race through the streets of New York City, and you see it in one of the trailers, some bits of it. We see a T-Rex at one point as an obstacle. Then at another point, we see King Kong on the Empire State Building jumping down from it and trying to mess the cars up. We see wrecking balls. We see cars smashing into other cars. The Back to the Future car, the Tron motorbikes, all this stuff, And
wasn't a lot of these things present in the Cruisin' USA series, Cruisin' Exotica, all those different?
I don't know. I never really played.
I stopped at Cruisin' World.
Well, whatever. I feel like a lot of the stuff was from this. And not to cut you off.
Sure.
I know. Never mind. This is a spoiler, so I'll never mind.
No, it's okay. Well, what I was getting at was this one sequence, which takes place about 5 to 10 minutes into the movie. This big, race sequence is kind of a one giant example of everything that's wrong and right with the movie at the same time. it's right in that it is kind of a spectacle. It is kind of dazzling to watch it. I was fortunate enough that at this particular screening room at the local AMC theater, they didn't fuck up the projection. It was actually clear and bright and big. It wasn't IMAX. It was just a standard 2D, but it was not fucked up. It didn't have a bad 3D filter on it. It wasn't in a bad aspect ratio or anything like that. It was actually pretty good. So we could see all the little minute details going on in the graphics, and that was pretty cool. But the other problem is a problem of oversaturation. There's just so much. It's like that quote from the producer of the Star Wars prequels. It's so dense. Every single frame has so many things going on, and it's just like, yes, okay, fine. There's a lot going on, but what does it mean? Why do we care that this is happening other than, ooh, reference? You know,
is it an irony that this movie about people who are trying to escape their horrible world through escapism is a film that is a piece of escapism from a very horrible world that we currently live in?
Do you guys know what Second Life is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I dated a girl years ago whose dad was obsessed with Second Life, like neglect. Like, you know, you remember when EverQuest was a thing, and you would see these talk shows like, he's addicted to EverQuest, he's neglecting the children. That's how this guy was with Second Life.
There were stories of people in China who were addicted to Facebook and they were neglecting their babies. So,
geez, well, I'm not saying anybody in Ready Player. I'm just saying the concept of the Oasis is Second Life, because with Second Life you can mod it. You know, you want an Iron Giant, there it is. You want a fucking Star Trek house, there it is. You know,
there is a sequence at the beginning of the film which is very good. It's very Spielbergian. It's very directorial, you know what I mean? It's very visual. It's Wade Watts, our main character, he's in the Stacks, which is this kind of grungy, junkyardish looking neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio, where the movie takes place, where it's become kind of like the new Silicon Valley, where the Oasis started, kind of. So all these businesses have kind of sprouted up and everything. And the population has increased significantly since now, you know, to like several billion people. Not in the city, but in the world. But in the city, it's literally like a trailer park that's built upwards, you know. And you see it in the footage from the movie and in the trailers and everything. But it starts off with him exiting his trailer, which is at the very top of one particular pillar. And he's making his way down, all the while Eddie Van Halen is playing in the background. You know, Jump! I think that's the song, right? Is that Van Halen?
That's Van Halen, yes.
Yeah, okay, good. And he's making his way down, and we see in every level that he's moving down, we see people in the Oasis in real life. Like, they're wearing goggles, and they're like, we see a fat lady on a stripper pole, you know, pretending to live the life of a
she's
model.
Sexy. She's a sexy boy.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. But we don't know what she's living exactly. But that
was a Freddie got fingered quote.
Yes.
I'm kind of curious, Bill. Do they ever explain, if you say you eat something in the quote Oasis? Is it?
Yeah.
Are you actually eating food or something?
No, I don't think so. But they do establish that there is real money exchanges taking place within the Oasis. You can go to public schools in the Oasis.
Right. Well, I've heard that's kind of like the social commentary is that the Oasis offers public schools, so education.
There is sort of like a free and democratized internet commentary going on.
I guess this is probably not the kind of tone the movie wants, but like, is there ever a scene of someone in school and then all of a sudden like an ad plays?
No.
Okay. See,
the Oasis is made completely ad free, except there is a company in the movie who are the bad guys that want to take over the Oasis and make ads and tier packages and stuff like that.
Wait, though. I wanted to go back to the fat girl pretending to be a skinny stripper.
Yeah.
Do you remember the episode of Futurama where they go into the virtual reality internet and Bender becomes a nurse and he's like, I'm a naughty nurse, $45 a minute or whatever the fuck, the joke is. But it's like, did they ever comment on something like that? Because that seemed
not really. It was really more of this particular visual thing they were doing, this visual statement, which was establishing the entire world, like where the actual planet is at, where civilization is at. We're seeing, as Wade Watts is traveling down the stacks, we see people on top of surfboards, on top of their trailer with the goggles on, pretending to ride waves. And then we see a boxer, boxing, and we see all the stuff while the song plays, Jump. And it's like a reverse thing is going on. Like what the intent here, I think, is to establish what this world is, but it's also making me depressed watching it. Like, I'm sad for humanity. Like, okay, it's cool to have video games. It's even cooler. Virtual reality, I think, is going to be an interesting medium once we kind of get a hang of it, if we ever get a hang of it. We may not. It might end up being a fad. Who knows? But if it actually turns out to be a thing, if we're able to kind of manipulate it and do wonderful stuff with it, that's great. Development of new technology, a different way of attending school, trading information, whatnot. But if it becomes something where it's literally pure escapism and nothing more, then, I mean, what's going to happen to it, space travel? What's going to happen to newer technologies? What's going to happen to our economy?
Well,
to all these other things.
I think this is a plot element of the film, which would be the social benefits, because
there are social benefits in that people from all over the world become friends,
right? But that is the modern internet, right?
Which is the modern internet, right?
Yeah.
The movie doesn't really have like a forward thinking in terms of like, where is the modern internet going to be in 20 years? Except on this one base level, which is virtual reality gaming.
So with that, you're saying that that this movie is kind of bereft of any real subtext.
There is a romance plot, which is again why I bring up the social implications of an environment like the Oasis. Is like, oh, people can meet and fall in love here, I guess. But
it's the same as with the internet. It's the same with meeting in real life too. It's really just,
and again, like, there's so many parallels to Second Life. I remember I used Second Life once, and I referred to it as a game, and the other people in the room with me were like, "It's not a game."
People do take this shit way too seriously, and in the movie, there is that feeling where you're watching it as a viewer, and you're like, "Okay, this is just a game, right?" And the people who are on screen are treating it like this is their life because it has become their life.
I mean, it
is their life.
I think the people of Second Life, I mean, I don't want to go into this, so never mind. I feel a certain way about what I said, but I'm not going to go into great detail about it. Continue.
Let's go ahead and focus on something within this film, which is you were talking about, Bill, that you're kind of it's the aims that people have in this future, it really no longer exist for real. Everything exists virtually.
We do see actual public schools and people like in actual reality attending school and watching videos on new kind of panels and stuff. But you can also do that. You can also attend public school from your home if you wanted to. Schools are overcrowded in this movie. We don't see a lot of it, but we see, when we do see it, they are overcrowded. We do see companies like the Bad Guy Company that Ben Mendelsohn is in charge of, IOI. He has done like a Willy Wonka kind of scheme where, okay, the plot of the movie is the owner of the Oasis, and the creator of it, James Halliday, has died. He died 5 years ago, and he has set up a game within the Oasis where you have to find 3 keys, and once you have all 3 keys, you can unlock this door that will lead you to an Easter egg. And if you win the Easter egg, then you get his fortune, and you get complete control of the Oasis. You can turn it off, you can turn it on, you can do whatever the fuck you want with it.
Which Rich Evans from Red Letter Media pointed out is directly paralleling a fucking plot point from an episode of Danny Phantom, which I only bring up because I am kind of a fan of Danny Phantom, and that was the weirdest thing to see him bring that up. I didn't even know he was aware of that show.
Which the obvious reference would be Willy Wonka, but that was a more obscure reference.
It's obscure, but it's also more accurate.
Altogether, which is, it sounds like what Wu-Tang Clan did with their album, and Martin Shkreli bought it, and
now the feds have it.
Yay!
Because Shkreli's ass is in jail.
Yay!
For screwing over rich people, not for screwing over poor people.
Well, he should have been put in jail for screwing over poor people.
Every Wu-Tang fan by
we're all poor people, and Martin Shkreli's
yeah, okay, I get what you're saying, but you know what I mean. He screwed over slightly wealthier people, and than us, and it wasn't for raising medicine prices like 500%.
He's going to white collar prison,
something like that. Yeah, he's actually going away for an okay bit of time.
Hopefully, what's his name, Harvey Weinstein will fuck him in his ass.
Whoa! God damn!
I don't feel bad about that joke.
It was just reported that Martin Shkreli never gave the Wu-Tang Clan album to the Department of Justice.
Oh, that's too bad. I'm sure they'll find it or something. I don't know.
Where was he hiding it? Okay, that's a whole discussion. You're throwing me off.
Bill Murray has it somewhere.
I wish.
Yeah, really. Wasn't Bill Murray gonna
there was supposedly a clause in the contract of him buying the record that said, in the next 365 days, Wu-Tang Clan and or Bill Murray have the right to stage a heist.
Yeah.
To get the album back. And I always joked, I was like, that is the greatest fucking movie premise.
I hope they make that into a movie, or at least
I want that. I would even if it was bad, because I've said like, oh, The Disaster Artist, I would watch that all the time.
Here's what I would do. Here's how I would make that movie. First of all, Jim Jarmusch should be directing. The continuance of the Wu-Tang Clan meets Bill Murray
from 200
Coffee and Cigarettes.
Coffee and cigarettes. 200 cigarettes.
So what would happen?
We're thinking 200 motels.
No, that's a Frank Zappa thing, isn't
there it? There is a movie called 200 Cigarettes, I think. But I've never seen it. Yeah. But yeah, so the movie would take place right after the end of the Coffee and Cigarettes short, and they would say, so anyway, Bill Murray, we're about to do this.
Whoa. You would need to do, in my opinion, like the With Bob and David on Netflix, where they get into the time machine and they come out 16 years later, but it's like, oh, you were just in that time machine the whole time waiting. So for the passage of time, and then Wu-Tang Clan and Bill Murray come out of the time machine, and they have these long Abraham Lincoln beards, and they're like, what did we do? We sold a record to some AIDS pill guy. All right, Bill Murray, call up Sofia Coppola.
That's it. That's the end of the movie. Yeah.
So why Sofia Coppola all of a sudden?
Because she directed him in Lost in Translation.
Okay.
He got the joke.
Yeah. So anyway, Ready Player One. God, where did we leave off?
Would you recommend this film to? I love references, and I love.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess we should move on to that then. Like I was saying in the beginning of this talk on Ready Player One, the references in this movie feel very overstuffed, as I'm sure they are in the book. In this movie, however, Spielberg does make an attempt to make them fun. There is one great reference in this film, and I guess it would be a spoiler to reveal it, and since we don't care about spoilers, I'll go ahead and do it. There's a sequence in the film which involves the second key, and our little team of heroes, our friends in the movie, Wade Watts, the girl who's Artemis, that's her avatar name, and a couple other characters. They enter a movie theater in the virtual world because they heard that James Halliday, all this relates to James Halliday's past. Like all the clues relate to things in his life and everything. And they understand that he wanted to go on a date to see The Shining. So they enter the movie theater and they enter the world of The Shining. They're in the Overlook Hotel.
Uh-huh.
And it's not just a virtual version of the Overlook Hotel. They're inside the film. They're virtual characters, but they're walking around. They've been spliced and superimposed into scenes from the actual film.
That's interesting.
And they're walking around, and it's actually done rather well. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I was like, oh my God, they're in the movie. And they go through little bits like where Jack Nicholson meets the old lady in the bathtub. They do that bit. They do the blood in the elevator, of course. They do.
Wait a second. They show the lady in the bathtub in a PG-13 rated.
Well, they cut out the nudity part, but
yeah, I was going to say
they shot around that. Is what I'm saying. They edited around that, but it was cleverly done. This entire sequence, and they treated it like it was the scariest movie of all time because when the people from the Bad Guy Corporation, IOI, the leader of that company, the CEO, I believe, he has amassed almost an army of VR soldiers to find these keys, kind of like in Willy Wonka, where he has all those workers tearing off the candy wrappers to find the ticket. They're all playing the Shining version of the game. They've entered that level. And we see them in real life in their VR machines, and they're all getting scared shitless. They're like, "Oh my God!" And I'm like, "Wow, they think very highly of The Shining in this movie, huh?" It's a great film. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's in the book. I think this was a new thing.
Okay.
I think because Spielberg's such a big Kubrick fan, and he knew Kubrick, so I think he just thought, "All right, let's play around with this. Let's throw this in there." So that was a clever bit. There was also one other bit involving Chucky, the doll, from Child's Play.
Did they get the fuck is his name?
I don't know.
Ken, what's his name?
Brad
Dourif.
Yeah, the voice of.
I don't know. I couldn't hear him.
I'm ashamed of myself because I'm a big child. Well, I haven't seen any of the recent sequels. I watched up to See to Chucky and then kind of called it quits. But
I have never watched a single one of those movies. I love Brad Dourif for his other work.
Brad Dourif. Well,
I don't know if Brad Dourif plays Chucky or reprises his role because we don't really. We hear Chucky kind of go hee 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 hee, but it's not really like it's kind of covered up by all the explosions going on. But the key thing that happens here is they throw Chucky out of the Back to the Future car as a weapon at one of the IOI soldiers because there's this big battle sequence that they have at the end.
For what it's worth, he's not credited in IMDb yet.
Okay. Well, anyway, they throw Chucky at one of the soldiers and to attack the other people. And when he's thrown at one of the IOI VR soldiers, the guy goes, "Oh no, it's fucking Chucky."
Oh, and that's the F word.
He actually says the F word. That's the one F bomb they got away with in the movie.
Steven Spielberg presents the F word.
Right. It might as well have been that. Well, anyway, like I said with the references, there were a few cute and clever uses of references, but a lot of times it's really just in the background and it's not really all that important. Like Spielberg's right in that sense. That's in the sense that these pop culture references mean nothing. So he treats them like nothing, except in a few instances, probably because he knew he had to include some gags in order to appease the fans, But he did them his way, and for that, I think that deserves some credit. But there are also some that are pretty empty. Like we see Freddy Krueger for a minute and he gets blown up. We see I don't know, like Mecha Godzilla at one point, and that didn't really pay off. Iron Giant's in it, but he's shooting lasers for no reason.
I wanted to bring that up. Have you watched the movie The Iron Giant?
No, I know it's held in high regard. I feel bad for not seeing it. But.
All of that, regardless, all of that pushed aside. I mean, it is great, and you should watch it. But the kind of moral to the Iron Giant is that he is non-violent.
Right.
And in this film,
by
he's
the way,
running around fucking shooting lasers and presumably destroying avatars, you know?
Yes, yeah. Well, not
Now, being
presumably.
fair,
he
Bill,
is.
the Iron Giant does in fact have a huge arsenal of weaponry in him.
But
Oh,
he
yes.
chooses not to use them.
Right. Now, they hint very strongly that the Iron Giant is from some sort of
he's Clank from Ratchet and Clank, which is
Right.
Clank is sort of this malfunction that was supposed to be this killing machine. You get the idea.
They hint though that there might be more of them somewhere, and
Right.
So
I mean, well,
maybe
here's
this
the thing.
isn't the actual Iron Giant. Maybe this
No,
is one of
it's-
many
it's
from an
the
alien
computer-
race.
The computer world. It's fucking making mods to Skyrim. It's Second Life. It's like I can do whatever I want with this fucking creation, you know?
Sure.
It's and I get that. I've just seen people make that complaint, and I'm like, well, don't even think of Ready Player One as some extension of the Iron Giant. Like the Iron Giant is its own little story.
Right.
That's fine.
I think the context in this movie, in Ready Player One, was okay. The Iron Giant, they're using him as a weapon, but they're using him as a weapon for good. You know,
I'm going to go ahead and quote the tagline for the early 2000s video game Postal 2. It's
Yeah.
only as violent as you are.
Right. So it's kind of like that. There's a bit where they're trying to amass an army to defeat the bad corporation, and he plays the main character, Wade Watts, whose avatar is Parzival. That's his name, Parzival. He picks up a boombox and starts playing "We're Not Gonna Take It."
Okay.
And he's holding it above his head just so I can say anything. And at one point, he goes on a date. He goes on a date with Artemis as he's dressed as Buckaroo Banzai. So these are some
Now
of the
that's pretty
references. To the movie
friggin' that's pretty friggin' obscure. It'd be interesting to see this movie with a young audience and hear
what's funny is, and what also makes no sense is this is like 2049, right? Or
Yeah.
it's in the 2040s, something like that.
Oh, Blade Runner.
And right, well, there you go. All right, but this is in the future, and there's a scene where him and Artemis are hooking up at this dance club, and he's dressed as Buckaroo Banzai, and she taps him on the shoulder and is like, "Oh, Buckaroo Banzai, that's really cool." And I'm like, how the fuck do these people? They're kids. They're teenagers.
Being
It's the
fair,
future.
I would personally make it a mission to ensure that everyone I know has seen Buckaroo Banzai across the
Right, but I mean, you get into that kind of stuff when you're in high school and college. You know what I mean? And these characters are in the high school era, but they're also kids from living in the future.
So perhaps
did culture stop at a certain point?
I feel like, well, if you
Bill, they finally got around to making Buckaroo Banzai versus the World Crime League.
Well,
I don't know.
I would say
possible, but
in defense of the lore, and I haven't seen the movie, so I could be like, there might be something that happens in the movie that proves me completely wrong, but maybe there is sort of this clique of teenagers that are really into stuff from that specific time period. I mean, kids now are there's probably a clique of younger kids that are super into 80s stuff now. And I mean, it's not a lot of, there is a lot of 80s nostalgia going on like across the board, from movies to music to SoundCloud, all over the place.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're right in that respect, but it does bring up the point where it's like, did culture die at a certain point when the Oasis was born?
Based on what I just said, it's also like, why aren't these kids? Why is some of these kids could be into the 70s? Some of these kids could have got into the 90s.
There was a 70s bit. They did do a bit where they referenced Staying Alive.
Well, that's just that.
Did they reference Staying Alive, the movie, or did they reference the scene in because Saturday Night Fever has
Saturday Night Fever? That's the one. I'm sorry. Not the sequel. It wasn't the sequel.
That's the Sylvester Stallone helmed sequel.
Yes. Okay. No, you're right. It was Saturday Night Fever where they did the dun, 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 that's that whole bit.
I was gonna say, because if he was referencing the movie,
Does somebody eat
Alive,
two
then it would have
slices
been
of pizza,
friggin'
one on top of the other?
I don't know. I didn't hear a word you just said.
In Saturday Night Fever, John Travolta eats 2 slices of pizza on like a double-decker slice of pizza.
That doesn't happen.
Oh, well, yeah. Since I work in a pizza shop, we make that joke.
That's pretty funny. That's really obscure too. Like this, pick out
super obscure.
that's specific of a detail from a movie that long ago. But that's interesting. That's interesting. I guess because it's pizza related. It's like
it's pizza related, and also John Travolta plays an Italian kid in that movie, right?
Hey yo,
hey Sandy, what you talking about?
If I got my sideburns. Hey,
so Bill, at the pizza place, is that literally all you do? Talk about references involving pizza and movies?
Yo, hold up. We watched Goodfellas like yesterday, and I laughed so hard because of the scene where the guy gets shot and he goes out in front of the shop, and the guy's like, "Why you gotta waste aprons on this guy? I know he's bleeding to death from a gunshot, but why are you wasting aprons on this guy?"
You're a jerk.
I feel like my boss would react that way.
Yeah.
Or what about when they shove the mailman's head in the pizza oven? Your head's gonna go in that fucking oven if
my boss would not do that, but he would definitely bitch at me for using aprons to fucking stop a blood from a bullet wound.
So Ready Player One, there's a lot to really talk about here.
You know what would impress me about Ready Player One?
What's that?
If they reference the pizza in a cup from The Jerk.
I don't even remember that joke.
Oh man, that's in The Jerk. It's somewhere in the middle of the movie. It's just for no reason whatsoever. Steve Martin's just got this plastic cup and he's eating like melted cheese out of it with a knife and with like a fork. And the girl's like, "What is this?" Like, pizza in a cup. It's the latest thing.
I mean, you could make that work, but it's also kind of called a stromboli.
That pizza in the cup reminded me of Tom Goes to the Mayor, where they have my big cups.
My big cups.
And it's like he's like, "Oh, what do you do with the excess soda?"
Well, we provide the styrofoam cone to pour the rest of your 2-liter
because it only fits
and then dispose of it.
2-liter. Yeah, it doesn't fit the whole 2-liter. They couldn't make it that big.
Oh, it's Tom Goes to the Mayor. You need to watch it because us sitting here joking about it, like you're not gonna get why it's funny. Like
it's dry and absurd.
I love it. I love it so much. Like.
But they don't reference that in the movie. They don't reference the.
Oh, dude, wouldn't it be so great if in Ready Player One there was somebody walking around with a Tom Peters avatar,
or like someone with a "Rats Off" to your shirt?
You're walking through the game, right? You're going through the Oasis, and then all of a sudden, like spaghetti pops up. Oh, spaghetti!
Gabagool.
Spaghetti
with Nettie. And then James Quall popped up and he was like, spaghetti and meatballs. This concludes the Tim and Eric reference portion of this podcast.
It's Ready Player One. Would I recommend it? You asked me that earlier.
I did.
I would, but with that asterisk next to it saying that this movie is kind of very superficial and depressing. Its world that it represents, like for me, that's what I got out of it. Was this is a future that's very dystopic and very much like Idiocracy, but in a different way. Like it's Idiocracy as far as like people entering the escapism and not climbing back out of it, or not realizing this is just supposed to be escapism. And it made me think a lot about my obsession and love of movies. It made me think like, okay, do I need to take a step back? I mean, I feel like I do that enough already. I feel like I balance it all pretty well, but do I need to reevaluate that? It kind of made me think where movies are heading too, as far as like immersion goes and things of that nature, I
think you and I can both agree that the best executed concept for this, not concept, the Lego movie. The Lego movie does this. It has good characters. It has an engaging plot. It has suspense, but it also crams in a shit ton of references.
Yes.
And
yes.
you and I, we're pretty much on the same page with the first Lego movie. Like,
but the references are not done superficially necessarily. They're done with detail and craft.
And also what
and thought.
Warner Brothers and Lego had the rights to. Let's not forget
right, that too. Yeah, but Warner and Miller were playing with that.
Right, and that's great.
They had the toys at their dispense, and they used them. And the movie had a good message. Ready Player One tries to have a message at the last 5 minutes of the movie.
Oh boy, no! I think the Lego movie
falls flat on its face.
Yeah, the Lego movie set up what it was doing pretty early
from the beginning. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Ready Player One tries to have, and I guess I could get into a spoiler here. Wade Watts wins the game. He wins control of the Oasis. Yeah, he does it. Yeah, and
glass elevator.
No, that doesn't happen. It should have, because Willy Wonka, but that doesn't happen. But he does get to talk to the ghost of James Halliday, or the AI of James Halliday that's left over. And James Halliday's like,
hello, I'm Mark Rylance. I won an Oscar for a Steven Spielberg film.
Right.
I really want to win another one.
He basically says to Wade, the real world's the only place where you can get a decent meal. That's all I took from that conversation. And then the movie ends with him and Artemis, Olivia Cook, the actress, making out. And then the voiceover narration saying, like, we decided to close the Oasis on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because sometimes you just want to make out with your girlfriend. The end. And I was like, what? I was like, so the final message of the movie is try to balance your video game life with actual life.
The final thing is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, your schedule better be better fit with the schedule of the guy who created it.
Right, exactly.
What if those are the 2 days of the week that
you have off from your regular job, right? But of course, people can work in the Oasis too. That's another thing. Labor is they even show labor camps.
So that effectively means then that Tuesdays and Thursdays are going to be the only days off available to anyone.
Yeah. The company IOI has a labor camp. Well, it's almost a concentration camp, really, where people are stuck in the VR world just doing menial labor within the VR world, building stuff and developing stuff from source codes. And that's never brought up by the police. When the police come to arrest the bad guy, because the bad guy has a gun and he's about to shoot Wade Watts, they just arrest him for that. They don't arrest him for holding people essentially hostage financially. And
what makes them held hostage financially exactly?
They're in debt for some reason, and they have to work it off in debtor's prison within the privatized company headquarters.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, right? It's not as well thought out as you would think, but it's also kind of like slap in the face blunt, But that was something I wanted explored a little bit more, because that was Artemis's motivation. Was her dad died in one of these labor intensive units, and that was her goal. Was to keep the Oasis out of the hands of this guy that runs this company. And he gets arrested, but only because he tried actual murder, not because he committed these horrific, economic and social crimes on real people.
The way you said that made me laugh, though. He tried actual murder.
He tried actual murder, right?
Do you like murder here? Try actual murder.
Try actual murder. For half off. We have it at wholesale. Available at Walbogs.
May not successfully get you out of court.
Yes, exactly. So it's like this future doesn't really have a good future. Like, the movie doesn't end on a super positive note. It ends on a note where it's like, things might get better. You know what I mean? Like, it ends on a we don't know. Just enjoy the game, motherfuckers. That's kind of the ending of it. And I got the sense that Spielberg had a feeling of dread making this movie, adapting it. Like, I'm sure he had some joy in doing some of the cool stuff, like the Shining stuff, but I got this overwhelming sensation that he was looking at what the characters in this movie were feeling with regards to pop culture and video gaming and living in simulations and stuff. And I think he was kind of like just taken aback by it and just couldn't grasp his head around a world that's heading in that direction. The world in the Oasis has, not in the Oasis, but the world of Earth, in the real world, has little mini drones that deliver you pizza and mail and all that stuff. So that stuff comes true. Like right now, Amazon's trying to work out how to do that in real life. That might be a decade or two later, but in the world of Ready Player One, that's already a reality. And people were playing, games in the Oasis, and then pizzas delivered. They just open the box and start eating. And I'm like, oh God, this is like Wall-E. The giant obese people that are sitting in their chairs just watching television with everything at their beck and call to please them. And I'm like, oh no. You know what I mean? Like, that's what this movie left me at. I was like, we're heading towards Wall-E, towards that future. And the movie, Wall-E ends on a positive note. The humans eventually get their acts together.
The original concept of Wall-E was going to be much more horrifying in that rather than the people being definably human, it would have reached a point where the quote humans were just giant balls of kind of gel, and it was going to have almost a Planet of the Apes like twist at the end, where it turns out that this is humanity.
Oh no!
Right, there wasn't going to be any explanation until the end to that.
I'm glad they stuck with what they stuck with, because it had kind of a basis in science. Like, if you stay in space long enough, your bone density kind of changes, and muscle density and all that stuff,
right,
becomes gel-like. And then once they get back to Earth and everything, they slowly, over the course of time, regain their human qualities back. And so this movie, Ready Player One, it whatever its intent was based on the trailers, which was, I think, isn't this world wonderful? The Oasis, it's crazy. And my feeling and takeaway from it was, yeah, it's potentially crazy, but what of the actual world consequences? What? I don't know. That's just me, though. I think about those kind of things. I like to think about those kind of things, and some filmmakers do, some filmmakers don't. Spielberg, I think, tried with this. I think he had a hard time with the source material and tried making it what it was. I gave it, on the beer scale, I'd give it 3 beers.
Okay.
It's just passable. It's not bad. It's just, it does the opposite of what you think it's supposed to be doing. Ultimately, if you're a thoughtful person, if you're someone who likes your movies with a little more commentary or statements or something to say about the state of things, this movie does that, but in kind of a reverse way of what it's supposed to be saying. So
yeah, I can see that.
So in a weird way, it's like a reverse good movie, I guess. I don't know. It's
reverse good,
which is bad. Yeah, right.
That reverse. I don't know. It's bad.
It's reverse good in that people are saying, "Oh, this is a great Spielberg movie," but it's great for other reasons, not for the reasons they're stating. That's what I mean.
Another thing that would have been interesting is if Spielberg just decided, "Fuck it." All the references in the movie are going to be Spielberg references.
There are a lot of Spielberg references, but a lot of them are also beyond Spielberg. Right, but yeah, that would be funny if it was all nothing but. Yeah, like we see someone as an avatar of Schindler.
And the truck from Duel shows up, and Dennis Weaver, comes in and is like, seriously, I've been freaking followed by this truck for 30 years.
Indiana Jones, yeah, I guess. We don't really see Indiana Jones in this. If we do, he's somewhere in the background, but he's not really like we don't have like a big scene where he's like bum ba you know.
Well,
It's
Harrison
just
Ford probably broke a hip or something.
Are there any Star Wars references?
no.
Oh, okay. Well,
None
then
that
that's
oh, there is one, but it's something that someone says.
Mhm.
The bad guy offers Wade Watts the Millennium Falcon, and Wade is like, "You have that?" And that's it. That was a throwaway line. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, have that in real life or within the Oasis? Because
Within the
if he had
Oasis, yeah. In real life, that would be better. But
yeah,
of course, if you're in the Oasis and you crash the Millennium Falcon, you don't actually die.
right. But if you are in real life and you have the Millennium Falcon, then you can get the frick out of this ugly ass deteriorating planet and find
Death
somewhere
Planet
else.
and move to Mars or something and just make your own world. Like
It's the
for
fastest
real.
hunk of junk in the galaxy, so you can get just about anywhere you want to go.
There you go. Exactly.
Anyway, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next film.
We
And,
talked Ready Player One to death, man. Wow.
Yeah.
It's like we're almost an hour in.
So the next one we're going to talk about is a movie that I saw a couple weeks ago, Love, Simon,
AKA Dear Simon in the Facebook
which I
Messenger
keep
chat.
referring to it as Dear Simon, and
I think you're thinking Dear John or something like that. You know, like
or the fact that the way it's the entire
Love, comma Simon. It's like
right.
a letter. Yeah.
The way it's written and the whole concept of the film is this person who starts getting these anonymous emails and he's responding to them. So Dear is what you think about, but Love, Simon is it's a reference to something that happens in the movie, and it's actually kind of a poignant moment in the film.
Okay.
So for those unfamiliar, Love, Simon is a really from a term of social equality, this is the first major studio production that depicts a teen romance, like a gay teen romance.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an interesting thing. And that's what caught my eye and I said, you know what? That's intriguing. Let's take a look. And what we got from it ultimately, to give a quick summary of it, is I would say a accomplished, well-acted melodrama. And that's not to dismiss it. Melodrama has its place in film. And
of course, yeah.
And the performances is what it leans heavily on, and they really do come through. After a bit of I would say the first 20 minutes, maybe even a half hour of the film, feels a little bit paint by numbers in terms of your standard romantic dramedy kind of movies. But it finds its own voice within that. And so the movie opens up with this character, Simon, who is a closeted gay teenage boy. He's attending school, suburbs of Georgia. And he's got, a typical kind of upper middle class life. His parents, he's got parents, he's got a sister.
He's got parents.
Yeah, well, right. He's not an orphan. That's,
Okay.
And his parents love him, and they're fairly progressive parents. But despite that, and I would argue probably mostly because he lives in the suburbs of Atlanta, they never mention that in the film that this is a reason. But the Deep South is not a good place for a person to come out, so to speak. And
sometimes communities in the area are okay with that kind of thing, but yes, traditionally and stereotypically, but also in real life, the Deep South is not the perfect place for that kind of stuff.
And to that point, there's only one out gay person in their school, and the person, Simon kind of has observed how people have treated him since he came out, and most people are cool with it and nice to him. But then there are the bullies out there who are jerks, and that's part of what scares him off of making his personal preferences public, so to speak. Suddenly, one day on the social media platform that their school has set up, a person writes this article about being also a closeted gay boy who goes to the school. And Simon is intrigued by it and moved by the words. The person types in this anonymous forum and uses the pseudonym Blue. And they strike up it starts off with basic conversation about what they're going through, and it starts turning into kind of a budding internet-based romance where neither knows each other's actual identity.
Yeah.
And the story, that's sort of the main crux of the story. Meanwhile, while this is happening, you see Simon's interaction with his family, his friends, none of whom know his secret, and they all have their own motivations. There's a girl who clearly has a thing for him, and Simon just does, admittedly, part of the problem of him being gay is he doesn't pick up on the hint that a girl who he has been friends with for his whole life digs him.
Right.
So that happens, and then you have a couple who, or not a couple. There's a couple of people who are also sort of occasionally hinting at a romance, and then there's this on again, off again friend within their unit who discovers his secret and sort of threatens him with exposure if he doesn't help him set him up with one of his friends. So, that's where the melodrama comes into the story.
Okay.
Yeah, there are elements of this film that I don't think work completely. That's probably the biggest one because there's some pretty horrible things that are done to people in this film. Also, the principal of the school is depicted as one of those ultra cool kind of people, played by the actor Tony Hale.
Okay.
From Arrested Development and stuff.
Buster, you've never watched Arrested Development. Yeah, you should, but that's...
Yeah. No, I have.
Well,
I meant Ken.
Oh, okay.
Well, I wasn't much of a fan of his character because it was so clearly the cool principal stereotype where he kind of goes over and above to make himself seem like he's cool to people, and it's something that's been done in a lot of movies. Anyway, where this movie works though is in the performances and the way the lead actor Nick Robinson really you feel emotionally his experience very well. You believe his situation, and I was actually kind of shocked to believe that to find out that Nick Robinson is actually not gay. After
he plays gay so well.
Well, just because it's such a really
committed performance.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And that's acting for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think really one of the highlights of this film is Simon's parents, played by Josh Duhamel and Jennifer Gardner.
Okay.
Because their characters are really, on one, with a weaker script and with less interesting actors, it could have been, you're really stereotypically generic, liberal family. But there's something that's interesting about Josh Duhamel's character as the father. He plays a guy who, the character he plays is. I would describe him as a former jock who was reformed by his liberal wife.
Mm.
Meaning you get a hint that in high school, he probably would have been the one who picked on the gay kid, something like that.
Oh, okay.
But through meeting this this wife of his, played by Jennifer Garner, you get a feeling that he's softened his views considerably, because there are those moments where they're awkward moments where he'll spout something that sounds kind of fucked up, and he realizes shortly after saying it that what he said wasn't, you know, it wasn't something he really meant. It was just sort of a relic of his unfortunate upbringing. And there's a jock aspect to his personality that's intriguing. And I liked that, because that felt like something that it felt like an interesting kind of two-way street as a performer, because he had to play, on one hand, a person who is really trying his best to be evolved, but he also is the product of, you know, being raised on something a little bit less evolved. And Jennifer Garner, on the other hand, is a very loving nuclear family mother, and she really plays that well. She has the what's the easiest way to call it? The empty nester syndrome going, where she sees her son becoming more and more independent, and she wants to give him the independence, but you can tell it hurts her giving that up.
Yeah.
And I've seen that in my own mom when I was a kid. So it's, you know, this is a movie that really had, as far as melodramas, you know, go, you know, it's got a very solid storytelling base to it. So I would say, if you're in the mood for a coming of age teen drama, give this a look.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, you guys have been dead silence.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just passing up a headline on Twitter saying Facebook scans what you send to other people on the Messenger app. So we better watch out and brush up on our film history.
I don't care. Watch what I say. Government, whatever.
Well,
what are they going to do with it?
Facebook, not the
Facebook's going to compile it into a folder, and what are they going to do with it? Nothing.
Apparently, they scan it for abuse.
Yeah.
Did I abuse you guys?
No.
No.
All right. So there we go. We're done.
All right.
Yeah. I never put anything to Facebook that I you know, don't expect to, you know, if someone tried to make something public, whatever. I mean.
Yeah, I got you. I'm just saying that was just something I was scrolling past, and I thought that'd be interesting to throw out.
Mark Zuckerberg testifies in court.
Those movie boozer guys, they don't know what they're talking about.
I don't know what they think that a Freddy Got Fingered is, but it's a piece of trash.
Or
I invented poking.
Or a mysterious classic.
Have either of you guys seen the video of Mark Zuckerberg doing VR, like in a country that was just recently hit by a hurricane? It's like
oh yeah.
That is some awkward fucking shit. Yeah,
that was weird. Yeah,
that was super weird. You both know what I'm talking about, then?
Yeah, I've seen that article. I've seen pieces of that video too.
Yeah. H3H3 like covered the video twice, and it is just so bizarre, because he's trying to talk about how this VR thing works, but it's like, you chose the poorest place to set up your video drone, and you could have taken it to France or the Vatican or somewhere where you would be like, oh, look at these nice things.
Yeah.
No, we want to look.
I think what he was trying to do was, even in the worst of situations, we can help or glean information. You know,
the dialogue, the audible dialogue of those videos does not bring that up at all. It is just about.
That's my guess. That was my guess, but
I mean, you could be right. That might be the mentality behind it. But what him and the other person he's online with are talking about is just. Isn't it cool that we're using the drone to virtual reality ourselves into this environment? And it's like, well, no, because these people just got fucking screwed over by a hurricane. I don't think you guys should be here.
Unless you're here to bring resources.
Right, and you're not physically there. You're there in some studio, comfortable somewhere, you know. The heat's about 65 degrees, maybe a little higher. It's good room temperature. Good room temperature. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg. And thank you, Trent Reznor and David Fincher, for telling his story.
Well, I don't think Zuckerberg liked that version of his story.
Well, there was some weird stuff going on in that movie.
Yeah, I know. That's exactly why he didn't like that version of his story.
So speaking of a movie with a lot of weird stuff going on, 7 Days in Entebbe is a crime thriller set in 1976, and it tells the true story of an Air France flight that was hijacked by Palestinian and German terrorists. And what's now this movie didn't have too big of a release. It had one kind of abortive release.
I thought you were about to say it didn't have two quarters to rub against one another.
Yeah, that's kind of. So here's the thing. This movie is the fifth film that depicts the events of the Entebbe hostage situation, and in 1976, when the actual event happened, less than 6 months after this hijacking happened, a television station in the U.S. and ABC released Victory at Entebbe, a rushed movie with a stunningly all-star cast that was shot. In order to speed things up, they used television cameras.
Oh.
I went ahead and, by the way, I watched all of these films that came before it because
the Entebbe films, yeah,
right, because I don't know why, I just felt like I was in the mood for a little challenge. Now I'll start with this movie, this new one, and then I'll just give a quick description of those other films and whether any of them are worth viewing. So first of all, 7 Days in Entebbe stars Rosamund Pike and Daniel Bruhl as the two German terrorists. And the main focus of the film is sort of from their point of view. It does deal with also the in the Israeli Prime Minister's office, the politics that went around organizing the rescue effort. Entebbe is in Uganda. And what happened was this Air France flight that was supposed to be heading from Tel Aviv, Israel, to Paris via Greece. There was a Athens airport stopover. It was hijacked right after taking off from Athens and flown to Uganda. And President Idi Amin of Uganda essentially allowed these terrorists to come to their airport and keep the hostages there while he played both sides of it. On one hand, he placated the terrorists, but in public, he made these great statements about how big of a humanitarian he was and that he was trying to resolve the situation. And he would even daily come into the airport and talk to the hostages and assure them of their safety. And Idi Amin, for those who don't know, was kind of crazier than a bag of dicks.
Right, he'd eat people.
Amongst other things.
Amongst many other things, yes.
Yeah, Idi Amin was literally an insane person who had control of an African nation. And anyway, so the primary focus of this film, though, is on trying to glean some reason behind why these two Germans were helping out Palestinian terrorists. And in trying that, Daniel Bruhl and Rosamund Pike do I would say a reasonable job in trying to humanize the terrorists a little bit, which I think is an interesting choice to make, because all prior adaptations, I'll say out of the blue here, pretty much treat the terrorists like just plain black and white bad guys. So this is the only of the film. This is the only attempt to give a human context to that, which the truth is, terrorists, as horrible as their acts might be, they're human beings, and they came to these decisions somehow in their own twisted way, thinking what they're doing was righteous. And exploring the reasons why a terrorist becomes radicalized in my opinion, it does bring you closer to an understanding of how to fix that, how to prevent terrorism from occurring. So I credit Jose Padilla, the director of this film, for trying that. Where it goes wrong, two areas. One is editing, and two is in a, you know what, this rolls into editing too, but the way the film ramps up its action,
Pacing?
which is to say it doesn't.
Oh, okay.
So for those who don't know the story of the hijacking, it was over the course of 7 days. First you have the hijacking, and then they land in Libya, refuel, then they fly to Entebbe in Uganda, and they they unload, and then for the next 6 days basically nothing happened other than the government of Israel was trying to find either a diplomatic or a military solution, and the hostages dealt with every day living in fear of their lives. And the movie tries to take from a very character built perspective, having these different characters involved in the situation interact with each other. The problem is the way this is filmed and the way it's edited, it ends up feeling like a slog. Admittedly, it was boring, I'm sure, to be one of those hostages. Boring, except for these, brief moments of fear where, you're worried for your life, because you're just sitting in a hot fucking airport waiting for,
help.
Who knows what.
Or, yeah.
But easily 20 minutes of this film that's 107 minutes long could have been cut out, and the story would have flowed a little bit better. As far as the editing, though, where this movie really gets weak is in its attempts to art the movie the fuck out. The movie opens with this dance company, this interpretive dance company, performing a modern dance version of a traditional Jewish song, and doing this thing where like a bunch of people wearing suits are sitting in chairs and singing to each other, and it's all very artsy, and you're like, so is Jose Padilla going for something kind of cool and clever with this? And I guess the performance piece is supposed to have something to do with the hijacking. That doesn't come through at all in what you're seeing. And he repeats this, he keeps returning to this dance thing over and over and over again. And the worst part is the finale of the film where the Israeli army is raiding this airport in this big action sequence that should be really tense. He constantly cuts back to this dance happening, and you don't care. You're like, what the fuck is with this? He cuts back to it so often, it's like you're at a tennis match. You keep looking left and right and saying, I can't understand what the fuck's going on, because he keeps cutting to this fucking dance number. I have never seen an action film ruined by a dance number before.
That's something.
I just don't fucking get what his thoughts were behind this. Here's the thing, as dull as the middle part of the movie was, if this last action sequence was really powerful, it could have redeemed itself. A great Western that I'm a huge fan of is Kevin Costner's Open Range. A lot of people have argued that the movie is boring because the entire middle portion of the film, there's no actual action. It's mostly just characters interacting. Now, I disagree with that. I think it's actually good character building. And the action sequence at the end is so violent and so big and powerful that it makes all of that character building worth the wait. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This doesn't do that. It's High Noon. High Noon is another movie like that where There's no action, and then you get this big finale that makes up for everything, and not just makes up for it, but vindicates it. So that's my thought of this movie. This movie's a hot mess. There's some elements in it that I think are done better than any of the other adaptations did, but not near enough to make up for it. Although here's a bit of trivia. The guy who plays the captain of the Air France flight is Brontis Jodorowsky.
Oh,
the son of Alejandro Jodorowsky. French actress Bernadette Lander. So
okay,
just a bit of trivia. You know, if you're a big enough Jodorowsky fan that you want to see what his son's up to, I guess he has a reasonably large role in the film. So that's
okay.
Not nearly. Unfortunately, you don't have the magical wizard kind of thing that you get when you see Jodorowsky talk. You just imagine him as this magical man who has like a vision that no one else sees, but he sees it, and that's why he's so magical.
Right.
Anyway, so the other films that have attempted this, Victory at Entebbe, the first one, I'll go over really quick. I watched it, and actually this is the only one I paid to watch because the only way to get it was to buy the DVD from Warner's Archive. And first of all, the worst $8 I ever spent.
Okay.
But I can't blame myself for thinking maybe this would be good, because listen to this cast.
Okay.
You have Kirk Douglas, Richard Dreyfuss, Anthony Hopkins, Burt Lancaster. You have Helmut Berger.
Oh.
Huge cast of great actors. And then, and this is where the movie's death knell, Linda Blair.
Oh no.
This is post-Exorcist Linda Blair looking for work. And she plays a girl on the flight who, one of the hostages. And she is, every minute that she is on screen in this is like nails on chalkboard, because they give her the worst dialogue. Her performance is just awful. And to be fair, all of the big name actors in this film try. Richard Dreyfuss and Kirk Douglas really have interesting performances. You get a great scene with Anthony Hopkins that's intriguing, and Burt Lancaster is solid. They're all doing their damnedest. The problem is this movie was rushed. It was made in under six. The terrorist action happened in July.
Mm-hmm.
This movie came out in December of 1976.
Oh no!
Yeah, the same freaking year. And do you think if they had rushed out a 9/11 movie that
that would have been deplorable?
Yeah. So this is hot garbage, and ABC should be ashamed of themselves forever. I'm not surprised. The only way to get this movie is buying it, because I wouldn't put this on streaming for people to see.
By the way, and not to break up the conversation, but I'm getting feedback on your.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on a second. I just realized my cell phone was near the microphone. Hold on. How's that now? Are you getting feedback?
No, it's good.
Okay. Yeah, that must have been causing it. Apologies.
That's okay.
Okay. So, Victory at Entebbe, terrible movie. Then, just a couple months, actually maybe a month or two after that, another American TV station, and this time NBC, released Raid on Entebbe in early 1977. It was released on in January, so just a month later.
Oh no.
Now here's the thing. This is one of the better adaptations.
Oh, okay.
First of all, it wasn't shot on shitty television cameras, so it actually feels cinematic. The Victory one was shot on like the same television cameras you would have seen in like the Star Wars Christmas special. So imagine a serious incident in which people died being depicted
like that. Yeah.
like that. Yeah, it's and the sets are so cheap looking. It's not even funny. Here they used actual locations. It also has a pretty nice cast. You have Peter Finch, you have Charles Bronson, James Woods, and Robert Loggia are in it. And then you have, as Idi Amin, Yaphet Kotto. And he does a damn good job, actually. Radon Entebbe is pretty good. It gets the history behind the incident accurate, which Victory did not. That extra month must have been enough for them to actually come with a reasonable script. The film's only downside is it's a little over long. It's 150 minutes long, and it really could have been, a 2-hour movie. But pretty good. And for a TV movie, its production value is very cinematic. In the 70s, most TV movies actually did have a bigger budget. So it's fortunate that they had that. John Saxon's in the movie too. So if you're a fan of that, it's worth seeing. Not my best worded. Now, and this is where we get to. I won't be mentioning The Last King of Scotland, by the way, because that's just like a sequence within the film,
right?
And it's a solid depiction of what you see in it. Last King of Scotland, though, is certainly, if you're looking for the definitive view of Idi Amin, that was Forrest Whitaker's masterpiece as an actor, I believe. But we get to the climax of my Entebbe conversation, which is, God damn it, if you can believe this, the best adaptation of the Entebbe attack is a Cannon film.
Oh no.
Well, it's an early one, because this is before Cannon actually came to the U.S. This is Operation Thunderbolt, a 1977 film made in Israel, directed by Menahem Golan.
Oh.
And starring where Daniel Bruhl played the male German terrorist in this.
Yeah.
Klaus Kinski plays the male German terrorist. Yeah. And that alone is worth your time if you are at all a Kinski fan, which I wouldn't call myself a fan anymore given what we've heard about him, but I would say
right.
I appreciate the work that he did. So as far as that goes, that said, Operation Thunderbolt is a solidly filmed and paced thriller. It comes in at just about 2 hours long, no longer than it needs to be, and it doesn't feel overly long. It manages to find moments of action within the doldrums of people sitting around waiting for stuff to happen. It's got a great, weirdly like American Western kind of soundtrack. There's like harmonica in it, and Menahem Golan loves American films, and so he made an Israeli film that feels like an American film, just with a lot of Hebrew spoken in it. And there's English spoken in it too. This movie is also notable for being incredibly accurate to how the people conversed with each other, because most of the hostages were Jewish and from Israel, and so most of them spoke Hebrew, though a few of them speak English. The terrorists communicated for the most part to the hostages in English, because that was a common language they shared.
Yeah.
You have Arabic spoken, German, French, Spanish. It runs the gamut. So it's nice to see characters who are from a nationality actually speaking that nationality's language in your movie. So I give it credit for that. There is a lot of stock footage in this film, but it's used in, I would say, a peak Roger Corman-y sort of way where it works. And unlike a lot of Cannon films, there are things that are actually shot in locations that make sense. Because this was an Israeli production, Menahem Golan was able to film in actual Israeli military bases and using a lot of the actual period accurate equipment. So Long story short, I'm not going to go into too much detail, other than to say, if for any reason you are looking for a thriller that deals with a real life terrorist situation, this movie deals with it really well. And it's sort of, I would say this is probably now, if I just name what I think the best canon movie was, this is this makes a strong argument. And it's also worth noting, this is one of the movies that got canon early critical notice because it was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film in 1978.
Oh, wow.
I just want to point out to you.
Oh, God.
Bill Leon.
Why is this happening? Can you hear?
Yeah, I'm hearing like I was hearing an echo earlier of our voices, but it's good now though.
All right, Bill.
His name is pronounced Menahem, not Menahem. Yeah, Menahem Golan.
Okay.
Menahem Golan.
Thank you very much for
for butting in.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
He's like just to let you guys know. Oh God.
That was the whole thing.
Yeah.
All right, Menahem. I don't speak Hebrew, so I'm not good at pronouncing.
I watched the documentary, the canon. What the hell's it called? What's the title of that?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. It's on Netflix.
Oh, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah.
I saw that too, but I guess it never the pronunciation never set with me. I guess
they usually just refer to them by their last names, if I recall.
Well, Golan and Globus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I just wanted to say that long way to go to say don't watch it. Okay, Great Unintended Operation Thunderbolt is actually a solid, good movie, and I recommend it. Plus, it is a canon movie, so yes, Sybil Danning is also in it.
Ah, okay. There you go.
So that's also a recommendation for Sybil Danning fans. Anyway.
Anyway. What's next on the agenda?
Well, we have only one last film left on our agenda because we are going to be skipping a few movies.
Yeah.
Because when Hawk joins us next week, we'll be talking about films that he's seen.
Plus, we'll also have some new releases from this week, like A Quiet Place and Isle of Dogs. So
right. So, The Death of Stalin.
Ooh, all right. This is yeah. I love this movie.
Yes, absolutely. Before I say anything else about this film, I want to say that I've seen it twice now, and it is
see it in theaters. See it with a crowd.
Absolutely. It is the first of all, it's probably the funniest movie I've seen in. I can't remember the last time I laughed this hard during a movie.
A couple of years, huh?
Oh gosh, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
So, Bill Leon, do you know anything about The Death of Stalin?
Ooh, okay.
It's Armando Iannucci.
I watched a trailer for it, and that's it. Steve Buscemi is in it, and
Jeffrey Tambor.
Yeah, there's like a mix of British and American actors, and I was kind of lost on the plot watching the trailer because I'm not so familiar with Stalin.
So what I'll do, since your familiarity with it is kind of vague, I'm going to give you a bit of a background. The movie is set at the time when Joseph Stalin he was kind of at the height of his power in the early 50s, and then suddenly one day he's found dead. And the concept of this movie is it follows his various lieutenants, all the different politicians within the Soviet architecture, as they are grasping for, first of all, they're struggling to survive, but they're grasping for power.
Right. For
looking for their own little piece of power. Whether they think realistically they have a chance of leading, whether they think they need to find someone to follow who won't kill them. That's another thing that's important.
Yes, that's a big part of the movie is like people getting killed for almost no reason, or if there is a reason, it's absurd.
It's a true and unfortunate fact that Joseph Stalin killed more people than Hitler killed. It's not heavily reported, but over the course of
because Stalin, for those who don't know, was a ally of ours during World War II. Probably a begrudging ally, if I recall, right?
Yeah. Well, it's the classic case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's estimated that Joseph Stalin was responsible for somewhere between 20 to 25 million deaths.
Oh God.
Yeah, and compared to the give or take 12 million that the Nazis were responsible for, not counting war deaths. Of course, war deaths will, up the numbers for both of them considerably.
I think the Nazis get more credit because they were so more pronounced and big, theatrical about their murders. I think Stalin was more, within the Soviet Union.
One of the main differences is Stalin didn't focus so much on killing specific groups of like ethnic groups. He killed people, like lots and lots of people from various groups.
He didn't discriminate. He was it's like, I don't like you.
What he discriminated against was anyone who was even a minor threat to his power.
It was just insane. I mean, you got to be so paranoid and so insecure to get to that level.
And so this movie comes out and says, let's take one of the biggest killers in the history of mankind and let's make a comedy about him.
A dark comedy, yes. And actually, at times, it's like a slapstick comedy.
Absolutely.
Specifically in the first half. The first half is very slapstick and Monty Python-ish.
So the movie, one of the earliest events that happens in the movie, which I think is a wonderful introduction to the way the way people existed in a Stalin-run Soviet government, is you see this beautiful performance of a classical music group playing on stage, and you see these two radio presenters who are just listening to it and marveling in the wonderment of this classical music. And then a telephone rings and they tell him to call this number back in
20 minutes or something.
Yeah, right. I think it's like 17 minutes. And they begin a debate with each other as to when that 17 minutes started. Did I write the number down right? And you can tell that they fear for their goddamn lives, that they need to call at that exact moment. And when they call, it's Joseph Stalin on the line, and Stalin simply tells them, I want a recording of this performance. I'll send someone by to pick it up.
And
then it's revealed that they weren't recording the performance.
So they have to get an audience back into the theater, and of course they don't have all of the audience from before, so they have to get regular street people who probably have never heard a performance like this before,
or could appreciate it
or could appreciate it, right? Exactly. They've probably never been in a theater like this before, and just for the acoustics alone, they have to get a crowd in there, and
right.
Then they have to bribe the one of the piano player played by Olga. What's her last name?
Olga Kurlenko, I believe.
Kurlenko. Yeah, they have to bribe her because she doesn't particularly like Stalin, and she doesn't think that she has to do this again. She's like, "Fuck you! That's not my bit," And they're like, "Okay, we'll pay you this many rubles." And she's like, "Okay."
And to make matters worse, the
conductor
faints, and so
just
they have
from stress. The stress that he's got to perform for Stalin now.
So they have to find a new conductor, and right in the midst of a major purge that's going along, where people are going door to door shooting people,
Not just people. They're military people are going door to door, killing people on the kill list.
We should I should clarify. It's not the military that was carrying.
Oh yeah, it's the security force, right?
Yeah, the secret police. At the time was the NKVD. Who the NKVD was sort of an early version of what would become.
KGB,
the KGB. And so the NKVD is going door to door, with lists of names and just shooting everyone on those names and anyone who resists. And
so during all this, one of the composer they eventually bring out of bed to do this composition is fearing for his life, because when he hears the door knocking, he's like, holy shit, they've come for me.
Yeah.
And he answers the door, and it's like, yes, sir, we need your talent.
Yeah. and so he proceeds to conduct this symphony.
You're our nearest and most available conductor.
Yes. No, he said you're Moscow's best and nearest conductor.
Right, exactly. Because all the other conductors are either dead or in the gulag, which goes again to the absurdity of this whole fascist dictatorship, is that anyone who's seen as any kind of a threat whatsoever to the integrity or the power of Stalin, they get thrown away or just shot. But they could actually be helpful depending on their talent or their job or whatever, their function.
Which comes to play after Stalin is found, because he's not initially completely dead. He's
just unconscious.
He's unconscious, and he's pissed himself, and it's grotesque.
The other politicians are like, "What if he can hear us?" Well, Stalin, he's a great guy. He's
And so the Vipers descend as all of his nearest
lieutenants. Yeah,
lieutenants are debating. Because
how to proceed? Like, do we get a doctor? Do we just let him die? Do we do this?
They finally decide that they have to get a doctor because they need to. The public needs to know that they tried. And the problem is Stalin's already killed all of the best doctors in the area. And there's this wonderful scene where they're debating, what if we get bad doctors and he dies? And someone finally says, well, if we get bad doctors and he dies, what does it matter anyway?
Right.
No one will know that they're bad doctors.
Well, the fuck doesn't matter. Yeah. And the doctors they get, the team of doctors they get are like are they from far away or something? Or were they in prison?
They wrangle all of the doctors in Moscow, but the problem is the doctors are either really young, like medical students, or they're really old retirees. And, and clearly they're also not the sharpest knives in the kitchen.
Right. Yeah. And there's one joke in there too where they had to use a respirator or something, but it was from America. And they're like, we can't use that. That's from America. It's from the States.
Yeah. And I try to remember the line, but Stalin's son arrives and it's like they're
trying to fill his brain with lies. And
they're filling his brain with American lies.
It's like these people are so crazy. Yeah, and there's so much. It should be noted too. They're not speaking in Russian accents.
Oh no, they don't even attempt.
They don't attempt that kind of accuracy. It's very much like in the vein of Life of Brian.
Right.
They're not pretending to.
The writer and director of this film, Armando Iannucci, is a Scotsman. Despite his very Italian name.
Yes.
It's an Italian family, but he was born and raised in Scotland. And he created the excellent British television series, The Thick of It, as well as its spin-off movie, In the Loop, and the American series for HBO, Veep.
Yes.
And his specialty...
He's incredibly witty. He's whip sharp,
Yeah, and his specialty is writing dialogue that is aggressively, comically vulgar.
Right. Yeah. Oh God, those are great bit in the loop where the main character's underling is getting aggressive with two other guys, and he says, "Shut it, Love Actually." Like he's referencing the movie Love Actually because the character he's yelling at looks like fucking Hugh Grant. So he's like, "Shut it, Love Actually."
And that's one of the more G-rated things that.
That's a G-rated moment. Yeah, he says he says the C word a couple times. He does this. He does that. You know, Iannucci he's like a master at weaving the swear words. You know, it's pretty fun. But the death of Stalin, of course, continues that grotesqueness, but in different ways. It's not just with the cuss words. In the second half of the film, the darkness really starts to come to the top. You know, like the first half is very, like we were saying, satirical and slapsticky and really goofy. And then when the funeral happens, the funeral proceeding, and then finally the final purge, or one of the final purges for power occurs, it's really horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
The implications of it all, you know? Like, I wasn't even aware that, I mean, I know this is based on some truth, but I got the feeling that as we got closer to the end, it was becoming more historically accurate.
And the actual steps, you'd be surprised how many things in this film are pulled directly from history, like things like there are photographs and things that are reproduced almost precisely. In fact, this movie, here's the thing. I'm going to make an argument for this film being entirely historically accurate on the strength of the fact that it is banned in Russia.
Yes, they don't.
And most of the former Soviet countries have also banned it. Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, like that. Yeah. And the movie actually did manage to actually get shown in Russia once, and the theater got sanctioned to hell for doing it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are historical errors in it, but the cinematic license that it uses, the creative license that it uses, essentially, I'm with Werner Herzog. I think there's an ecstatic truth behind this film that it is telling. You don't watch this movie thinking that you're getting the definitive history on the events surrounding the death of Stalin. Watch it to get understanding of the bizarreness of how Soviet rule under the dictator of Stalin existed. And Steve Buscemi, by the way, we haven't mentioned him yet. He plays
Khrushchev.
Yes, Nikita Khrushchev, who would be the next Iron Man of Russia, the next person to follow up Stalin's rule. For a brief time, Khrushchev's probably most famous moment is when, during a UN meeting, he took off his shoe and started beating it on the desk in order to make a point.
Yeah.
Fiery personality, Khrushchev. And Buscemi plays him like a New Yorker, which is hilarious.
It's probably, yeah. But he's got a little fire to him. I mean, at first he's very unassuming.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because in real life Khrushchev was that look. You know, he looked unassuming. You know, and for the role they got Buscemi, who also looks very unassuming. And in the initial beginning of the film, it's very, you know, he's just kind of going through the motions. And then when Stalin dies, you can see like there's a clock going on in his head where he's like, okay, I got X amount of time to make my moves and get everything in place so that I can get on top, you know.
And there are others who are having that same feeling. The actor Simon Russell Beale plays Beria.
Oh, he's great. He's great.
And Beria was Khrushchev's nemesis. He was also trying to seize power, and the way they taunt each other and make fun of each other throughout the film is great. Michael Palin plays Molotov, who was another major politician, and he plays him as a wonderfully kind of bumbling guy outwardly,
a bumbling loyalist. Yeah,
right. And then you find out he's got this very conniving streak to him that is fascinating, to the point where like he swears off his own wife because he thinks she's dead, and then when it's introduced and it's shown that she's actually alive, he still holds the
grudge against her.
You're right. The grudge against her for betraying the Soviet Union, even though she didn't. She was just put on a list. Jeffrey Tambor plays Malenkov, who was sort of a puppet politician, and it's a really solid performance there too. My favorite performance in this film, though.
Oh, Jason Isaacs.
Jason Isaacs as the General Georgy Zhukov.
He's the character that has the most vulgar dialogue, I would say.
Yes, Zhukov, for time to bring the history out of it. General Zhukov was essentially the Soviets' hero of World War II. He turned the tide, and he was the general who took control and fixed all of the fuck ups that happened early on. And essentially, you could argue he's the general who turned the tide on the entire war itself, because by occupying the Germans with as much manpower as he did, it allowed the Allies on the Western side to, the Germans had to divert a lot of strength away from that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Zhukov, though, was also a very famous braggart, and goddamn, Jason Isaacs great.
He's very boisterous. He's very big, and
he plays it with a strong kind of Cockney accent and mannerism.
Look at your fucking face when I made that joke. Ha 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 ha.
Oh yeah, it's just something about it that is just magical.
It's a blast to watch the entire movie, and I wrote about Beale's performance as Beria. I don't know. I didn't know much about the character he plays, the real life version. But in this movie, it's weird. The first half, again, going with the whole first half is like goofy slapstick. Second half is like dark subtext. The first half of this shows Beria as being this very evil mastermind, so to speak, behind all the. I mean, Stalin is, of course, the main one, but he's also like almost like the Satan on his shoulder. You know what I mean? The devil on his shoulder kind of character. But then by the second half, there's a couple moments where it's like he may be a bad guy, a really bad guy, but at least he's honest about being a bad guy. Does that make any sense? He's the one that's at least, like he says to Stalin's daughter, he says this line where he's like, look, I'm actually trying to look out for you. There are guys out there that are going to fuck you over, and I'm trying to, and it's possible he meant it. He wasn't actually fucking around there. He was actually trying to.
Everyone involved is part of this great hypocrisy, and the main difference is that Beria, he pretty much admitted that he was an awful human being, and was pretty open about it. And that's not to vindicate him, because he also was a known rapist and
right. And there was a bit in the movie that confused me at first, because Jeffrey Tambor was looking for the young girl in the photo with Stalin so he could have that same portrait. And they're looking all over for her, and then they show Beria with a young girl. And at first I thought, oh, he's hiding the girl away from Tambor so to fuck over Tambor. But then it turns out it was actually another girl. And then I was like, well, why was he having that girl? And I was like, oh.
Yeah, because he was keeping that girl for his own amusement.
Yes, I was like, oh, God.
Yeah, the thing about this movie that also makes it really powerful
it pulls no punches. Yeah.
Is while it's being just drop dead hilarious, it will suddenly pull a move and go super real. And all of a sudden, for a moment or two, you won't be laughing. You'll be just in horror of what you're seeing. And Iannucci makes this work. And it shouldn't. A comedy should be about getting the rhythm going and making you laugh throughout the whole thing. But somehow he makes it work so that these moments of realism where suddenly it's not funny are just perfectly paced and perfectly placed within the story for you to, where when once that moment's done, you are hungry for something funny to happen again.
There are so many multiple dimensions of to the performances and to the tones with it that are within the sequences of the performances. Like, for example, when they pick up Stalin's body, they put him on the bed.
Oh,
that whole bit where they're surrounding him in the bedroom and they're trying to figure out what to do. It's like each one of them has their own game going on.
And each one of them is going out of their way to try to make themselves seem like the person showing the most.
I'm the one in charge. I'm the one who cares the most about Stalin. I'm the one who cares the most about the Soviet Union. We're going to do this. And then
Right.
they'd have a moment where it's like, is Stalin listening to us?
Yeah.
He stopped us. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
there are several moments of that where it's like they'll stop for a second. They'll try to check themselves, then they'll keep going. But each one has their own way of doing it. And again, it goes into the whole multiple dimensions to what's happening in just one shot. It's like that shot in the movie Lemon that I was talking about months ago with Hawk, where they're singing a song. The family's singing a song at dinner, and it's like every performance of that song by each character is said in a different dimension and in a different tone, in a different frame of mind, and it was so beautifully funny that I was laughing so hard, and the Death of Stalin does the same kind of thing, does the same balancing act, really. Iannucci, of course, has shown over time that he's just great at that. In the Loop specifically, Thick of It, of course, this movie in a totally different way than the others. It's just crazy to see.
Yep. I think we should just leave it at that, because this is a movie that
yes, go see this in the theater if you can. If you have to wait for VOD, that's fine, but really do go try to see this with a crowd. I think this plays better when you've gone out for the night and you're in the theater.
Absolutely. All right. So, Bill, I need to ask you, Bill Leon, you said I'm pulling a Justice League in the comments. What do you mean?
I started falling asleep, but also I'm in an environment. I'm in an environment with a lot of wind right now, so
Yeah.
I'm super worried about my microphone picking that up. Can you hear it?
Not really.
Oh, a little bit, but nothing too bad.
It's not bad. Yeah.
Okay. Well, what were we talking about?
We finished up the Death of Stalin, and now we're
yeah. But no, there was something. Oh, Lemon. You were talking about Lemon, and I wanted to make a comment about Lemon, and Ken, have you watched Lemon?
No, not yet. I'll get to it.
It's on Hulu.
It's really alienating, but in the best possible way.
Yeah.
Is that a Jesus? Is that a bad assessment?
No, it's not a bad assessment whatsoever. That's okay. Perfect. That's good.
The film thrives on awkwardness. The film thrives on sort of like riding the line of like what it is to be a decent human being.
Okay.
Oh yeah, Lemon's great. And I don't think either of you have watched Love on Netflix, but the director of Lemon and Brett Gelman are both involved in that show. And
okay, all right.
I loved it. I love the way it concluded, and I'm a big fan of that series.
All right.
And also, since we're talking about Netflix, the new Trailer Park Boys wasn't awful. It's the same old shit that it always is. If you like it, you're going to like it. If you don't like the stuff they've been doing for the past few years, you're not going to like it.
Say that like Donald Trump.
Well, I feel
boys.
Listen, Sunnyvale Trailer Park is just fake news on top of fake news. I cannot believe Julian is working for a security job at the mall. It doesn't add up. Big Bang Theory has more consistency. I cannot express it enough that in my heart of hearts, I would rather be watching the new Roseanne.
#losers.
Roseanne supported Donald Trump in the presidential election. Should we talk about that? Has anybody watched the new Roseanne? Because I
don't give a shit.
I'm totally caught up. So new Roseanne, Roseanne voted for Donald Trump, and Jackie, her sister, voted for Hillary, and they had a falling out. And the series, when the new series picks up, they're like burning that bridge and getting back together. But it's like they make a lot of Trump jokes on the new Roseanne, and it makes me question Roseanne's politics. I'm like, what's
she is kind of a crazy person, so it could change the flip of a dime. You know?
The thing about Roseanne is she has said many times that she's like more left leaning, and yet she displays a lot of very right leaning political stances from time to time.
It's wild that
she's a beat on her.
Well, because of this show and because of its symbiosis, I guess is the right term, to the original show. Like, you have John Goodman now. There's a plot element where Darlene has I don't want to say a gay son, because the character is not gay, but he's like a cross-dresser. He's a flamboyant kid. But you have these scenes where John Goodman will be like, "Oh, look at this little fruit." That's not the exact dialogue, but it is kind of like the attitude that the show puts forth. You know what I mean? Oh, because he goes to school dressed like this, bullies are going to pick on him. This kid doesn't know how to take care of himself. And I'm like, well, you know, and this is a thing that a lot of kids are going through nowadays, you know, dealing with bullies that could become violent. Especially, I think the show takes place in like Ohio, close to the South. You guys understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Okay. I'm just saying it's to me, it's like Roseanne's politics coming out of the other actors' mouths, especially John Goodman, where I'm like, damn, I don't think John Goodman would act towards this.
It's like crossed wires.
Yeah. It's really weird. It's sort of weird to think about it that way. But
can I just say, by the way, that I've never seen an episode of Roseanne in my life.
Never?
So, never. And
right.
so
a lot of the older seasons were pretty good.
And also very progressive socially.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. The hardest thing for me to get into, though, is a half-hour sitcom, so I probably never will see it.
I could be wrong, but I feel like the original run of Roseanne back in the day was probably like had the most prominent use of gay characters at the time. This was like pre-Will and Grace.
Yeah.
So yeah, like for a network sitcom to be tackling some of the issues that they were, I feel like this wind is really distracting. Anyway.
Well, I mean, it's there, but you know, we're conversing, so.
So next week we'll have Hawk on the show. Hopefully, Hawk Ripjaw will be back, and we'll be talking
Tomb Raider. We're going to talk about the Tomb Raider movie that nobody saw except these two.
Oh, I didn't see it either.
Not these two.
I saw it, and I have no interest in talking about it.
There's Unsane we'd like to talk about. There's the new releases this weekend. There's probably something else that I'm forgetting.
Stuff.
Yes. Come back for more stuff.